Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the February 16th, 2023 meeting of the MTS Board of Directors. Chair Fletcher is out this morning, so I will hold down the fort and we'll get started this morning with our roll call.
Chavez, McCann,
Present.
Donovan, Fletcher, Vargas. The County of San Diego is absent. Goebel,
Here.
Leyva Gonzalez,
Here.
Dillard,
Here.
Gaston,
Here.
Rodriguez. The City of National City is absent. Frank,
Here.
Montgomery Steppe,
Here.
Elo Rivera,
Present.
Moreno. Board Member Moreno is present. Whitburn,
Here.
Hall,
Here.
Vice Chair, we have a quorum.
Very good. Thank you very much. Let's begin with non-agenda public comment.
We have several. Thomas Skipson. Please make your way to the podium. Next up is Christine Moore. Christine, please make your way to the podium.
Hello, good morning. Ms. Cooney and members of the MTS Board of Directors. I'm Christine Moore, and I'm here with my mom, Elva Gibson. We are here this morning. Actually, I'm a little rattled because we were told downstairs that the public was not allowed in this meeting. And we had to push back and say that this is a public meeting. But just FYI, maybe let the staff downstairs know that people are allowed to come and comment at this meeting. With that, I'm here to share our experience with MTS Access. We are nearing the end of our second week with the MTS Access program. For background, my mom is widowed. She's a cancer survivor. She's been diagnosed with dementia and has advanced arthritis in both knees. We were fortunate to be able to enroll her in the Glenner Dementia Day program in Hillcrest, which has been a lifesaver for our family. It's helped with safe care for her during the day and has allowed us to be able to focus on work instead of our normal caregiving duties. The challenge has been that every day we've had to transport her back and forth. So spending about 2 hours a day on the road, picking her up, driving her to the program, driving back home, and then reverse that in the afternoon. So when we found out about the MTS Access program, we were so happy and so grateful for a program like this that exists for San Diegans to be able to relieve some of the obligations of caregiving. And so we started the program last week with high hopes. However, on day one, my mother was deposited at the Glenner facility an hour before it opened and left on the sidewalk. And as a dementia patient, that is very dangerous for my mother. Luckily, staff had chosen to arrive early that day to do some extra work and saw her standing out there and brought her inside, but they did call me to let me know the situation that she had been placed in. Things went well for the next couple days, and then on day 4, no one showed up and to pick her up. And I called in to find out what was happening, and they said, well, we require that your mother stand outside for a 30-minute period. So when the driver arrives, she can just get in. And I explained that standing outside for 30 minutes is not safe for a dementia patient, nor can she physically do that with her knees. And they said, well, that's the rule, and we don't know what else to tell you. So my mother missed that day, which meant that we were charged $95 for a day of care that she was not able to attend. I was fortunate in that Glenner, once we explained the situation, waived that, but we were made aware that that can't be an ongoing situation. Yesterday or 2 days ago, they picked her up from the program. It should have been about a 15-minute drive. And my mother did not come home until an hour later. During that time, I had no idea where she was. It was very nerve-wracking. And I found out later that they picked her up in a taxi, and then they picked up 2 additional passengers that my mother did not know. And then they just drove around San Diego. And then my mother made it home an hour later. Please don't get me wrong. I am so grateful that this program exists, but I am concerned that there's a lack of awareness around the challenges that come with cognitive impairment. I looked up online to see if there was a disability access board or advisory committee to MTS, and I could not find one. The last information I found was from 2016. So if it exists, I would love to know about it. But I would say, first and foremost, we need to keep folks like my mom safe. And maybe that is better training with the taxi drivers. I was told, I put in the notes that they needed to go to the door to pick up my mother and they needed to drop her off at the door. That was completely disregarded. And I was told that they don't have to do that, that they're independent contractors and they're not required to make sure that my mother gets to the door safely. So I feel that while this is a worthy program, that there's room for improvement. And whatever I can do to contribute towards raising awareness about the challenges that come with a family member with cognitive impairment, I'm here. I would be happy to provide additional feedback or work with MTS on a better process to make sure that my mom and other folks with dementia and other cognitive impairments are safe. So again, thank you for this program existing. I think we can do better. And please know that I'm a resource. I think if you don't already have a caregiver on a committee, whether it exists or not, you probably should. Because we are the ones responsible for the day-to-day safety and welfare of the people that we love. So thank you for the program, and let me know if there's anything I can do to help raise awareness about the challenges. Thank you.
Mike Wigan, our Chief Operating Officer of BUS, would like to speak with you in the
Yes,
lobby, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Alex Wong, please unmute yourself now.
I'm sorry? Next speaker. Oh, next speaker. Thank you.
Alex, go ahead and begin.
Oh, yes. So increasing frequency needs to be the top priority of transit in San Diego. In 1991, MTS started providing 7.5-minute peak hour frequencies on the Blue Line. It took another 3 decades in 2020 before MTS increased off-peak Blue Line frequencies to 7.5 minutes. San Diego cannot afford to wait another 10, 20 years before increasing Mid-Coast and Green Line trolley frequencies to 7.5 minutes all day long. These two corridors are growing gangbusters. Mission Valley and University City will be 2 of the biggest sustainable transit-oriented development success stories in America, but they can only achieve that potential with vastly improved frequencies. Mission Valley is growing into a community where people can live, work, shop, and play without leaving their neighborhood. And frankly, no one wants to wait up to 15 minutes during peak hours simply to take a 10-minute trolley trip across Mission Valley. Everyone who can afford to drive will drive instead, clogging up Friars Road even more. The only way to get drivers out of their cars and onto transit is increasing frequency. Yes, Mission Valley needs a grade-separated San Diego River Trail that allows people to quickly bike across the neighborhood. But that river trail can only complement, not replace, the need for more frequent trolleys. There's always people who cannot bike for whatever reason. These include the elderly, the disabled, pregnant women, people carrying luggage, goods, or groceries, and anyone who's simply exhausted. These people deserve frequent trolley service. Or maybe the weather's just awful. Maybe there's a heat wave, heavy rains, strong winds, or there's hazardous air quality from wildfire smoke. Maybe the roads and bike lanes in Mission Valley are flooded. During bad weather, everyone prefers riding the trolley to biking outside in the elements. And the number one enemy of transit passengers is waiting, especially waiting outside in the elements. They need more frequency. Many people think that San Diego isn't and never will be dense enough to support transit. Fortunately, that's false. The density is coming fast. The real question is, will there be very frequent transit to support that density? That concludes my comment.
Thank you. That concludes public comment, Vice Chair.
Thank you very much. We will go ahead and move on to the consent agenda. Are there any requests by board members to pull any of the items on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I will welcome yes, member Montgomery Step.
Apologies, Vice Chair. I have some comments for item number 12. So whenever if you want me to go through those now.
This would be a perfect time.
Okay.
Yes, Chair Pro Tem Montgomery Step.
Okay, thank you so much. So for item 12, this is the security contract. I just have a couple of comments and some questions. So I want to start by thanking Al and Sharon for your oversight of this item. I also want to thank the officers and supporting personnel that dedicate their time to maintaining safety for our passengers on the system. it goes without saying how hard and thankless these jobs are. We truly do not get to see what goes on behind the scenes. And I just want to certainly acknowledge that, and also a competitive living wage can increase morale in staff. We all know that and are experiencing that in our own municipalities as well. So for those reasons, I will be supporting this item, but I do have some questions about certain aspects of the contract. Was not able to review this previously, so I just want to make sure that I get answers to these questions. So of the 190 contracted personnel, are all of those positions filled? Or are there any projected vacancies in this contract?
They actually overfill positions, so when they have call-offs there, or if somebody resigns without much notice, we have somebody that can backfill into it.
Okay,
So they're actually filling positions on their behalf. So we
Okay.
do have a seamless.
and they're not having any issues with that process right now?
We've been very lucky that for the last 6 months or so, we've been able to maintain some of the officers, but it's getting more and more difficult because, as the presentation says, it's just the job market right now and the other equivalent pay rates in San Diego have gone up.
Well, and just to clarify, that's why we're bringing this forward, is because they were having a hard time.
Yeah.
They've been paying more than what they're contractually required to pay. But they're not willing to continue that. It's not a good, business model for them.
Yeah.
So that's why we brought this forward.
Okay, good. Thank you for that explanation. And then, so for the optional 2 years of the contract, is this the aspect of the contract where MTS staff recommends future options to include in-house staff?
So this would be something we would want to bring up with the Public Security Committee. We were just wanted to bring forward the idea that we maybe want to revisit the type of mix of in-house and external that we have. This was certainly something that was in our APTA peer review as a recommendation that we look at that. We were waiting until we got this contract in place and kind of settled down. But certainly that's going to be the work of the committee going forward this year.
Okay, okay. so-
This does not change that right now.
Right, okay, all right, got it, thank you. Just want to acknowledge just the customer satisfaction surveys. Thank you for doing those. There is a high demand for more security, but in addition to that, weekend service frequency, cleanliness, and lighting, which are also infrastructure requests. And I just want to emphasize the importance of how much that could relieve our officers and make people feel more safe. We use the term crime prevention by environmental design, or community safety through environmental design. And it should also be in existence on the systems. I also hope to see social workers in the future that can assist our officers when it comes to our unsheltered population, along with local nonprofit groups that can help with ridership education about the system at our local transit stops and the community in general. So with that, I will support this item, and I will go ahead and move the consent agenda. Vice Chair.
Second.
Thank you very much, Chair Pro Tem. Thank you, Member McCann. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. We'll go ahead and take the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those voting no? Any abstentions? Seeing none, the consent agenda passes. Thank you. We'll move along to our discussion and report items, and we will begin with item number 13, which is the San Diego Transit Corporation pension investment status. Staff, please begin your presentation.
Good morning. My name is Mike Thompson. I'm the Director of Financial Planning Analysis, and I'm just going to introduce these items and give you a little background on the San Diego Transit Pension Plan. Next to me is Jeremy Miller. He'll be doing the first presentation. He's our investment consultant. Just the background. So MTS has a number of different pension plans. The MTS Admin Group and the San Diego Trolley Group are in CalPERS defined benefit plans. And CalPERS manages those processes, manages the investments, and manages the actual returns and the assumptions therein. For San Diego Transit, they've always had a self-funded private plan. So this private plan has been in place for a number of years, and it covers the bus driver union, ATU, the mechanic union, which is IBEW, and it also covers the San Diego Transit management employees. So it's about 1,600 active and retired employees just in that little pot of the group of the people. So there is a pension board from those groups that manages this pension plan. They are trustees on that plan. The MTS board sort of oversees everything. So the actual retirement board is responsible for retirement application review, the investment oversight and administration of the general plan terms. The funding of the plan is shared by active employees in MTS each year. So the contribution is based on the actuarial evaluation report, which will be the second presentation, and the employees' contributions. So in 2012, this plan was closed to non-contract employees through collective bargaining. And at that point in time, the goal was set to achieve 100% funding by 2038 with the liability structure in that plan. All the new bus drivers and new mechanics are in defined contribution plan starting at that point in time. So MTS board direction over the last 10 years has been to continue paying benefits to retirees and eligible active members as membership continues to decrease, given the closed plan status. We're also, again, trying to achieve sustainability, get up to 100% funded by 2038. That's the plan that's put in place today. Over the last 5 or 10 years, we've been slowly reducing the market return assumptions based on the market volatility in the marketplace. And we've also have a plan to smooth out investment gains and losses over a 5-year period to make the contributions more level instead of seeing huge swings from year to year as the actual contributions come in, how they come in. So all this has proved fairly successful. We have moved that actuarial target from 7.5% a number of years ago down to 6%. And then we are still on plan to be 100% funded by 2038, covering that unfunded liability. So there's 2 presentations today. Every year we come back to the MTS board to go over the investment return results for the previous fiscal year, which ended on June 30th, 2022. I'm not going to steal all of Jeremy's presentation, and also talk about how those investments are structured as well to meet our liabilities. And the second presentation will be from Ann Harper from Chiron, who is our actuary, and she will talk about the actuarial evaluation report, looking at how the plan did compared to the assumptions that were put in place previously, and then look at how that changes the contribution for the next year based on all the demographic returns and also the investment returns, updating it for the new fiscal year. And then for that second item, there will actually be a direction from the board to set next year's contribution. The first item will just be informational. The second item will actually have action. With that, I'll turn it over to Jeremy.
Thank you, Mike. Hello, everyone. I will start out talking a little bit about the investment structure, give a little more detail, and then talk through some of the returns and some of what's gone on throughout the past fiscal year. First, we see the investment structure here as of 6/30/2022. End of fiscal year 2022, and you can see the assets are diversified across 4 broad asset class categories: domestic equity, international equity, fixed income, and alternatives that are meant to help diversify stocks and bonds across a variety of underlying sub-asset classes. The goal of portfolio management is, of course, to try and maximize return, but at a prudent level of risk. And so as we look at these assets that are there to satisfy the needs of the liabilities, we want to make sure we take into account the liability structure. So one important component of that is looking at the closed nature of the plan and factoring that in, which after that took place in 2011, you can see the risk profile was decreased significantly to account for that change in the liability structure. So this is a more mature plan with net outflows. And so the asset structure is meant to align with that through a more conservative, diversified, and liquid nature of the plan. So through that process, we've tried to balance capital preservation and appreciation while also seeking to reduce fees through passive investing. And on the next slide, we get into some of the investment details where we look below the asset classes at some of the investment products and strategies that we use to help implement this plan. You can see it's diversified across 10 different products. through those four asset class categories to try and reduce overall portfolio risk through diversification, but also controlling concentration risks by minimizing the amount in any one active manager. We also added a ESG investment in 2022 via the Fidelity US Sustainability Index per our discussion last year. Performance for fiscal year 2022, as you saw on the previous slide, you had a particularly good 2021, but hopefully not too surprising that 2022 was particularly difficult for both stocks and bonds, which is rather unusual. And the reason being inflation. So as we've had rapidly rising inflation, that has brought rapidly rising interest rates, which is particularly difficult for both stocks and bonds, which we have not seen for quite some time. Stocks and bonds moving together like that. And of course, the last time that happened was when we had significant inflation. So you can see the return broken out by quarter, some particularly difficult quarters. The plan returned negative 10%, 10.8% over the fiscal year 2022, which was, of course, difficult, well ahead of its asset return benchmark, doing better than that, but obviously well under its actuarial assumed rate of return, which is why will be talked about in a minute, but you have a long-term strategy and you're going to have some years where you're well above that actuarial return, some years where you're well below, which happened the last 2 years, both sides of that, and is smoothed over time. This breaks down the investment detail of that negative 10.8% return. You can see it broken across the 10 or the 4 broad asset classes. Some were a little below, some a little above, but again, long story short, it was a very difficult year with inflation. It did pull down some of your more mid to longer term returns, but as you go, the farther back you go, of course, the more, the less effect it had on your long run returns. In summary, we think you have a plan that's well diversified, that is across managers and strategies and asset classes, that is also well aligned with your liability structure, which is more conservative in nature given the closed nature of the plan, with also an eye to keeping fees as low as possible. And we think it's well structured going forward, given that liability structure. You have had a good start to fiscal year 2023. You're up about 7% thus far this year. We hope that, of course, continues. And with that, I'll stop and see if there are any questions.
Thank you, Jeremy. The next presentation will be Ann Harper. And it will be the results of the actuarial analysis for, again, fiscal year 22 ended June 30, 2022. Yeah.
Is it on? Okay. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here to present these results of the actuarial evaluation.
I just wanted to clarify. So we are doing 2 of these. Item 13 was only informational. So.
The first part of my presentation is going to give a little background to pension funding. I see a lot of new faces, so it's always good to kind of have a small training session before we get into all of the complex numbers. Then there are 3 parts to an actuarial evaluation. The first thing that we talk about is what changed from last year. And then the second part is looking at the plan's history, where you've been. And then most importantly, we'll look at what the future holds and what we're expecting contributions and funded statuses to look like going forward. So this diagram here is a simple way to look at pension funding. It's called the tank. And you can see at the very bottom of the graph, we have benefits coming out of the tank. And that is the sole purpose of a pension fund, is to be able to provide benefits to your retirees when they're ready to stop working. There's also a small lever at the bottom there of pension plan expenses. Then there are two levers or actually three levers at the top, which represent the inflows to the pension system, which are investment earnings and contributions. So the size of this tank represents the plan's liabilities, which are all of the benefits of your membership, the retirees, and the active member benefits that they've earned to date. And then the level of water in the tank, that green portion, are your plan's assets. And so the difference between the full size of that tank and the assets, that gap there, is what is called the actuarial unfunded accrued liability. So the levers at the top are controlled and determined by two different policies. The investment policy dictates how much of flow is going into the tank. And that investment policy is basically your asset allocation, which Jeremy just talked about, how much is invested in equities or fixed incomes, and that determines your expected rate of return. On the left-hand side, we have your contributions coming into the plan. The employee contributions are set by bargaining units, and then the employer contribution is determined by your funding policy or your amortization policy. And that determines the lever in the flow of those employer contributions. In most systems here in California have we're turning on that valve, not full speed, but turning that more. So you're getting those flow of employer contributions now rather than later in your horizon of your pension plan. So what we do every actuarial evaluation, we come in as actuaries and we measure that size of the tank. Have your benefits changed? Have your liabilities changed? And what does that look like? We look at how many people retired, what your salary increases were like for your active members, and the mortality of your retiree population. And then we also look at the investments. Did your assets earn what was expected? And your expected return on your assets is 6%. And so every year we measure those two things. We do what Jeremy and Mike both said about the smoothing of those assets, where we only recognize differences like in actuarial investment losses or gains over a 5-year period. So we keep the assets in that tank relatively stable, so there's not huge fluctuations in your contributions. But so we look at that and we determine what that new unfunded is, and then we determine how much that employer contribution valve needs to, be turned up or turned down. So breaking down the components of the employer contribution, there are three pieces. There's what's called the normal cost, and that's really just the portion of your active membership, their benefits that are occurring this year. We're pre-funding those benefits each and every year so that when an active member retires, theoretically, we have enough money in your pension plan to actually pay for all of their benefits with no further contributions. So each and every year, you have this normal cost contribution. Then there's also paying off that unfunded accrued liability, and then there's administrative expenses. And those three summed up is the total contribution, and then the employer piece is less whatever the employees are paying, which is a much smaller portion than the employer. So before I go into this year's valuation results, is there any questions with what I presented so far?
Member Gastel.
Well, I'm not sure I have a question, but I have to say this is the best explanation I've ever heard. I served on MTS previously, and I don't remember learning anything about plumbing. This is really helpful, and public pensions is something that I do have a lot of experience, but I have to say I've never heard it explained this well.
Thank you. My dad's in the plumbing business. So
Oh, isn't that priceless?
So here we are at the actual evaluation where we're measuring liabilities, looking at the assets, and last year's contribution was $17.9 million. And the contribution this year is going up by about $1 million to $18.9 million. And the pieces there are, first, we looked at that actual liability experience, and what we saw was in the data that members but members' salaries increased more than we anticipated due to inflation, right? And then also your retirees receive cost of living adjustments, and those are also based on inflation. So the good news is that the members are getting higher salaries, your retirees have more benefits to, to mitigate the inflation, but it does come at a cost. And this year, that increased your contribution by about $600,000. And then the next is the actual investment experience, and that's your earnings on your assets. And as Jeremy said, there was a loss this year of 11%, near 11%. Now you were targeted to earn 6%, so that really is a loss on for your fund of about 17%. So that by itself would have increased the contribution by about $700,000, but there were past net gains from 2021 specifically, where again, we're phasing those gains in as well. So that decreased the contribution by $200,000. So a net increase of $500,000 due to your investment experience. And due to the closed nature of the plan, every year, your normal costs, those costs of active members accruing benefits decreases, not because their benefits are decreasing, but because the aggregate number of active members that you have is going down. So you don't have as many active members in your plan, it's closed, so those benefits that you have to pre-fund are decreasing. So that decreased your contribution by $150,000. And then there's just some miscellaneous other factors like retirements, mortality that increase the rate, or not the rate, but the contribution by about $50,000. Again, a net increase of about $1 million from our last valuation. Here we're looking at the plan history, and we're looking at the contributions. Back between 2013 and 15, the contribution was between about $12 and $13 million, where the assumed rate of return was 7.5%. And since then, in the last 7 years, we've reduced that assumed rate of return from 7.5% down to 6%. And that first decrease in that assumed rate of return happened in 2016. And you can see a bump in the contributions there from 12 to 15. Now that all wasn't due to the assumed rate of return change. There were other factors involved as well, such as our mortality assumption. But then it remains stable between about 15 and 16 million. And then we again reduced that assumed rate of return down to 6.75%, which now the contribution then increased to 17.5 million. And then again, we made some adjustments to the assumptions in 2021. There was only a $300,000 increase from 2020, but that's due to, in fact, to the fact that the plan had tremendous earnings back in 2021. So you had some reductions in your contribution because of your investment earnings. And the net result of those assumption changes were, hold on, let me get that. Were about $1 million back in 2021. So here we are today at, as I explained in the previous slide, went from 17.9 million to 18.9 million. Here we're looking at the history of your funded ratio. The bars here represent your plan's liabilities, and then the line represents your, actually the bars represent, the bars represent the liability, the line represents the funded ratio, and the space above the gold bars represent your unfunded liability. So again, back in 2013 and 15, you had a higher funded ratio, peaking at 65.7%. But then as we made those assumptions more conservative, we dropped the discount rate, we tightened the mortality assumption because we expected people to live longer. the funded ratio has kind of hovered around 58%, and we're at 58.1% in 2022, a decrease from last year, which the funded ratio was 58.7%. These pies here represent the composition of your membership. The top is headcount, and the bottom pies represent your plan's liabilities. On the top, you can see the change from 2012 to 2022 and how there's much more higher percentage of your plan is retirees. It went from less than 40 or less than 50% in 2012 to about 67% of retirees. 67% of your plan is made up of retirees in 2022. And a very similar dynamic for your plan's liabilities. Your retirees represented about 60% of the liability in 2012. Now it represents close to 70%. Again, a maturing plan, not just because it's closed. We're seeing plans mature all across California, even if they're open. But yours is maturing a little bit faster because of the closed nature. Okay, so going forward, here's our projections of what the contributions are going to look like. And we call this an actuarial fantasy, if you will, where the size of the tank is exactly as we expected. That flow of investment returns is exactly as we expect each and every year. And we know that's not going to happen. But you can see here that we're expecting contributions to continue to increase over the next 4 years slightly. And that's, again, to phase in this year's actuarial loss on your investments. So in 2028, your contribution is expected to be around 20.6 million. And then after that, when the plan, as we said, is closed, and so your contributions are going to continue to decrease because you're paying less to pre-fund your active member benefits because there's fewer active members. And then by 2038 is your last UAL payment. And then the contributions fall all the way down to just what that, just to fund those active member benefits that are existing in 2039, down to the normal cost is what we call it, down to about $1 million. And then here we're looking at a projection of the funded ratio. And in this graph, the funded ratio is on the top of the bars and the lines are representing the assets. And then the bars themselves are the liabilities. And you can see the liabilities in the plan are expected to decrease over time. And that is not typical. It's not typical with an open system because your plan is closed. You can see that the liabilities are going to start to decline over time. And the funded ratio right now is 58%, and we're expecting that to stay about 58% over the next few years as we recognize those asset losses. But then there's substantial progress in that funded ratio, and we're going to get to 100% funded by 2037. And that, again, is based on your funding policy, where every layer of your UAL is going to be paid off by 2037. Each new layer is going to have a decreasing time frame where that will be paid off. So this year it was 15 years. Next year's UAL change will be 14, and so on. So that it's going to be paid off by that 2037 time frame. And with that, I don't have anything else to share, but I'm happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for, go ahead.
I'll just read the staff recommendation before we get to questions. So the staff recommendation that the MTS Board of Directors receive this Senior Transit Employee Retirement Plan Actuarial Evaluation as of July 1, 2022, and adopt the pension contribution amount of $18,946,000 for fiscal year 2024, as stated in the plan.
Thank you very much for those presentations. Before we go to board comments and questions, let me ask Clerk Gonzalez if there are any public comments.
There are none, Vice Chair.
All right, thank you very much. And we will begin our conversation with Member Moreno.
Thank you for the presentation. I made extensive comments at Executive Committee, but I'm definitely going to be a little bit more brief today. First off, I strongly support continuing to lower our assumed rate of return, particularly in good years. On average, return over the last 3 years was 2.8%, and it was 4% over the last 5 years and 5% over the last 10 years. All of these are lower than our current assumed rate of return, which is 6%. So I support continuing to lower this further, particularly as I mentioned in good years. Most likely until it reaches, I think 4 to 5% would be safe. Secondly, I am troubled by the fact that MTS currently offers defined benefit pensions through CalPERS to its highest paid executives, but provides no defined benefit pension to its lower paid blue collared employees of the San Diego Transit Corporation. I think this is fundamentally unfair, and I believe that it's only a matter of time before MTS will have to restore pension benefits to the San Diego Transit Corporation workers. Now, in order to make sure that we're ready when that day does come, I did ask staff during our executive committee to present to Budget Development Committee an analysis of the cost and benefit of such a change. And I look forward to it being brought to the Budget Committee. When do we think that report will be brought to the Budget Committee?
We're going to try to bring it to the next one. Might be kind of high level, but then we can dial it down or, get more granular.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Well, thank you for the presentation, and I will support the motion on the floor, and that concludes, or I will move the motion on the floor, and that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Moreno. Any other board questions or comments? Member Hall.
I'll just second.
All right, we have a motion from Member Moreno, a second from Member Hall. The motion on the floor is to receive the SDTC employment retirement plans actuarial valuation as of July 1st, 2022, and adopt the pension contribution amount of $18,946,198 for fiscal year 2024. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes. And we will now move on to item number 15, the City of San Diego planned closure of Fifth Avenue. And I believe we have a presentation this morning for Mr. Desmond.
Yeah, so as Dennis is getting ready to present, I just wanted to say that I'm bringing this forward as some of the comments that we've received will indicate it's, I'm not people's favorite person for bringing this forward today, but we as staff do this every day where we look at changes that are suggested in our cities that we feel would not be advantageous for our riders and for our bus service in particular. This one I felt like we needed to bring because we do see a lot more impacts to it. And so we wanted to bring this forward with the recognition that this is really the City of San Diego's choice if they want to do the, we fully support the Fifth Avenue promenade as a project. And we have been in discussions about that for some time as well. But we wanted you to be aware of the negative impacts to our transit services as we move forward. So Dennis is going to present this.
Great. Good morning, Dennis Desmond, Director of Planning for MTS. Thank you for the introduction, Sharon. The Gaslamp Promenade project is a collaboration between the City of San Diego as well as two downtown organizations, the Downtown Partnership and the Gaslamp Quarter Association. The purpose is to close Fifth Avenue to traffic to create a large pedestrian space, hence the promenade title, and allow restaurants to expand their dining areas into the street right of way. So this is currently operating during certain days and times of the week as under a special event permit with the City of San Diego. So we are currently detouring during certain times to accommodate the special event. This project at build out is proposed to completely close Fifth Avenue to vehicles from approximately 11 in the morning through the rest of the day, 7 days a week from Broadway down to K Street. I believe it's to remain open at the very south end to Harbor Drive for vehicular traffic. And then the cross streets would remain open. So E Street, F Street, G Street Market, et cetera, would remain open, but Fifth Avenue itself would be closed. The diagram on the screen right now is just an image of the concept of the Gaslamp Promenade and what that would look like. As you can see, there's landscaping in the street right of way, and then the cross streets remain open to traffic. Again, the street would remain open before 11 a.m. That would allow delivery trucks to access the businesses along Fifth Avenue. And then our understanding is the intention is to install bollards. There would be fixed bollards. I believe there will be a removable one so that emergency vehicles would be able to access it. There is a requirement for a fire lane. I believe it's 20 feet wide to be allowed to be maintained in the middle of the street right of way. And then we've suggested the possibility of gates or retractable bollards that could allow buses to use that fire lane. But our understanding is the project at this point doesn't have the funding for that. It'd be substantially more expensive. So two of our major core network bus routes, routes 3 and 120, would be impacted by this closure. We have been talking with the Gaslamp Quarter Association for about 2.5 years about this, especially dealing with the special event permit issues, and more recently with the city for about the last 1.5 years. So our hope was to at least maintain access to the buses north of Fifth Avenue. I'm sorry, north of Market Street on Fifth Avenue. However, last month, the city informed MTS that it was going to move ahead with the full closure, including for transit vehicles. Just to give a little bit of background about routes 3 and 120, Route 3 operates from the Euclid Avenue Transit Center in Lincoln Park up to the UCSD Medical Center in Hillcrest via primarily Ocean View Boulevard on the south end and 4th and 5th Avenues on the north end. But the route is a very important route. Pre-pandemic, we were operating this route every 12 minutes. We're going to get back to that. So that's 5 buses an hour in each direction. It provides access for these southeastern communities, Lincoln Park, Mountain View, Memorial, Barrio Logan, Logan Heights, and Sherman Heights, to jobs, schools, medical care, and shopping. It also serves the Regional Senior Center that's on Beach Street off of Fifth Avenue in Cortez Hill, and the new county's new Live Well Center at Market and Euclid, across from the Euclid Transit Center. It offers transfers to the blue and orange lines, the orange line, of course, at Euclid Transit Center, and then both blue and orange at Park and Market Station. Route 120 is a north-south route that operates between downtown, essentially Horton Plaza, and the Kearny Mesa Transit Center. It operates up through Fashion Valley. Every 15 minutes is a limited stop route. So both these routes serve 4th and 5th Avenues. Route 3 serves all the local stops. Route 120 serves limited stops, is a little bit of a higher speed route. The route serves, of course, downtown, Hillcrest, Fashion Valley, Linda Vista, and Kearny Mesa. Again, this serves 3 hospitals along the route, and actually 5 if you include UCSD and Scripps Mercy and Hillcrest, and provides access to these central area communities to jobs, shopping, and medical care. And this does transfer with all 3 trolley lines. In terms of the demographics of the various historically disadvantaged populations served by these routes, collectively, they serve an area that's 6% higher minority and almost 10% higher in low income population than our overall service area average. Again, these routes serve 5 regional hospitals, connecting all of these communities along the route to healthcare opportunities, as well as the jobs that go with those, especially for essential workers. They connect seniors to services, shopping, and healthcare, including that senior center in the Bankers Hill area. And then, of course, they transport students to school, recreation, and job opportunities, among them the Educational Cultural Complex on Ocean View Boulevard, and City College and other high schools along the route. So to zoom in a little bit on what the Gaslamp Quarter looks like for these 2 routes. Route 3 it's the northbound direction of Route 3 that's affected. The southbound uses Fourth Avenue is not affected by the Gaslamp Promenade, but the northbound is affected. Northbound Route 3 comes west on Market Street out of Sherman Heights, turns right on Fifth Avenue and goes directly up Fifth Avenue up to Hillcrest and the hospitals area. Route 20 again has its terminal in downtown near Horton Plaza, so it comes down Fourth Avenue. It has a terminal just south of Broadway next to the new Horton Plaza development. Then it uses E Street, 1 block south of Broadway, to turn around, and then turns left again on Fifth Avenue North to go back up towards Hillcrest. I show some numbers on this slide at each of the stops. The stops are indicated by triangles, and the numbers that show an on and off, those are the fiscal year 2019, so pre-pandemic boardings and alightings at each stop. And the stops that are shown are the ones that would be primarily affected by this closure. So the project would close the 4 blocks of Fifth Avenue that are used by the northbound Route 3, and then the 1 block used by the Route 120. This pink area shown on here is the closure that affects our Route 3, but it does extend again south of Market Street. Currently, I mentioned that this is currently operating as a special event. It only operates as a special event as far north as F Street. The last 2 blocks on the northern part of this are not part of the special event permit. So the current event does not impact our Route 120 at all. However, it does require a detour of Route 3 during that time, but we're able to use F Street to get back to Fifth Avenue. And I'm going to go a little bit more detail into why going up to Broadway is more challenging for us. So the routing that is shown on the screen are the likely reroutes that we would have to use in order to accommodate the closure of Fifth Avenue. So the northbound Route 3, instead of going down to Fifth Avenue, would turn right on 7th Avenue. There are no other northbound streets until you get to First Avenue. So the northbound 3 would have to use 7th Avenue. And of course, we wouldn't be able to get back to Fifth Avenue until Broadway because it would be closed. So it would remove the 3 stops from service, Market and 6th, 5th and G, and 5th and Broadway from the Route 3. It does add 2 turns to the route, and I'll talk a little bit more about turns. This scenario here requires physical modifications at 3 Broadway intersections, Broadway at 4th, 5th, and 7th, in order to be able to, for the buses to make those turns. Our concern on westbound Broadway, where the number 3 bus would have to travel, is that this is also already very busy. We have 8 other routes that are already on westbound Broadway. Route 3 would bring 5 more buses an hour into that mix. And then the real challenge for us is the right turn onto Fifth Avenue. The intersection of 5th and Broadway is extremely busy, especially with pedestrian traffic. So we anticipate that it would be very difficult for the buses to be able to turn right. Not difficult, not physically challenging for the buses to turn right, but in terms of getting the green right of way to be able to turn right after waiting for pedestrians and other vehicles, that it could introduce very significant delays to the route. Not only would it potentially delay Route 3, but all of the other buses, those other 8 routes, that are actually now stopped behind a Route 3 bus as it's waiting to make that turn. Route 20 would have less of an, Route 120. We have a Route 20, but this is Route 120, would have less of an impact in that it would turn around at Broadway instead of E Street. Again, we would need modifications at Broadway and 4th and Broadway at 5th, and we would lose our terminal at Horton Plaza, as well as the transfers to buses along Broadway. Folks would have to walk down from C Street to get to the Broadway buses. So the 2 major impacts to our riders are the added travel time and the lower reliability that primarily comes from the added turns on Route 3. So as you can imagine, when you're driving down the street and you get a green light, you just move forward at the normal speed of traffic through the green phase. However, when you have to turn, you do have to slow down. In the bus's case, you have to almost stop because you've got passengers on board that you want to keep in their seats. So it does slow down buses significantly when we have to make a turn. And again, we're going to be queued behind other turning vehicles and waiting for pedestrians. So it really reduces the amount of green time that we have in that phase to be able to make that turn. And then in terms of riders trying to access the gas lamp quarter, we would not have any more service along Fifth Avenue in the gas lamp quarter. So workers and residents, including the seniors in the Lions Manor that are over at 4th and G, would have to walk 2 extra blocks to access transit. You know, one thing that I think we've always tried to keep in mind is how can transit really be in the middle of the activity center so that we can remain visible and relevant. And so we've had cases like this before where we've really pushed back against being moved blocks or away from the activity center in various communities around. So this is another case where we really like to be right in the center of activity to make it as convenient as possible for people and also for people to see that transit does serve these areas. The photograph on screen, thank you Google Maps, but this is a photograph of the corner of 7th and Market. This is the intersection where the westbound Route 3 would turn right off of Market Street onto northbound 7th Avenue. And this is actually 2 blocks east of 5th Avenue. And use the mouse, hopefully it shows up. In the background, this is the Lions Manor. This is the senior tower. That's so important for those people that are getting up to the senior center and to medical facilities. And then the heart of the gas lamp is really along 5th Avenue, hence the Promenade Project. So this is a daytime photo. You can imagine at night, this looks a little bit different. The stop that you see on the right side of the screen, this is the alternative bus stop. This is where folks would have to walk to. So at night, it feels a little bit more remote. You're in kind of a sea of parking lots on the backside of the parking structure rather than in the heart of the gas lamp quarter. So we've talked about some alternatives internally and also talked to the city about these. And one is to close 5th Avenue only south of Market Street. So to have the Promenade Project only south of Market Street. Obviously that doesn't meet the city's goals, which is to have the promenade up to Broadway, and we understand that. We talked about the possibility of using stripage and signage to restrict access instead of the bollards so that buses would still be able to get through. We understand for safety reasons that's not a desirable option. Again, the option of gates or retractable bollards was considered, but deemed too expensive for the project budget. And the last one is to continue the dialogue with city staff to see if we can come to a resolution before we implement the project. And that's really what we're asking today in the recommendation, which is to approve an advisory statement to the city of San Diego as follows. In order to operate the highest quality and most reliable service to our passengers, the MTS Board of Directors supports a solution that will maintain transit bus access along 5th Avenue north of Market Street. The board asks the city staff to continue collaboration with MTS to identify transit-friendly solutions prior to the full implementation of the Promenade Project. And as Sharon mentioned, this is City of San Diego right-of-way. So this would be an advisory statement to the city. They do have the ultimate authority to develop the right-of-way as they see fit.
Thank you, Mr. Desmond. Clerk Gonzalez, let's begin public comment.
Josh Coyne, please make your way to the podium.
Good morning. Good morning, Vice Chair Whitburn and MTS board members. My name is Josh Coyne and I'm Vice President of Policy for the Downtown San Diego Partnership. For over 30 years, our members have advocated for an economically prosperous and culturally vibrant urban center. For 22 of those 30 years, we have been the proud operator of the City of San Diego's Property Business Improvement District, known as the Clean and Safe program that operates 24/7, 365, enhanced maintenance, safety, and activation in the 275 blocks of downtown. Our organization has the utmost respect for the necessary municipal activities that happen in the public right-of-way, from refuse collection, street sweeping, power washing, and transportation in all of its forms. All of these functions are critical to our economy. And I want to recognize and appreciate the role that this organization plays and you as board members to advocate and advance public transportation for our over 3 million county residents. However, collectively, we should all be looking at solving some of our region's greatest needs, such as climate change, the rising cost of living, Vision Zero, and pedestrian safety without delay. The Gaslamp Promenade is not about limiting access for private gain. It's about implementing a walkable, pedestrian, family-friendly environment that can be enjoyed by residents and visitors alike. Numerous studies have indicated that placing a greater emphasis on walkability can greatly enhance economic development, but also safety. And as we look at residential and commercial growth in the urban core, specifically in downtown, we might also need to look at how transportation and circulation in general looks. In downtown specifically, we need to think maybe perhaps a little bit of a less one-way solution, and we need to start thinking about creative solutions, greater collaboration among government agencies. So I want to thank this board and others for meeting with stakeholders for the over 3 years, as mentioned by staff. But I think it's time for us to work on implementing a collaborative solution that works for everyone. And I want to thank you all for your time.
Dion Akers, please make your way to the podium.
Good morning, Vice Chair Whitburn, Ms. Cooney, board members, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Dion Akers, Government Affairs Manager for the City of San Diego. I'm here on behalf of Mayor Todd Gloria. I'm here today to urge you to support the city's plans for the pedestrian promenade in the Gaslamp Quarter. As we heard from Dennis and staff, the goal of transforming Fifth Avenue into pedestrian promenade has been a vision of community leaders, organizations, and elected officials for many years. And we're excited for the progress that we've seen in recent years. The COVID-19 pandemic has been challenging, but it's brought a few silver linings. One of those has been the opportunity for the city of San Diego to implement programs and policies that allowed dining, business, arts and culture into the public right of way like never before. Now, the city of San Diego intends to make these temporary improvements permanent later this year when we install bollards like Dennis talked about later this year. All the while, we continue to develop plans for a long-term permanent pedestrian promenade through the Gaslamp on Fifth Avenue with additional placemaking for pedestrian-centric activities and business. We acknowledge that the changes to Fifth Avenue will have impacts to MTS, and we don't want to discount that. However, we believe that the city of San Diego and MTS can work together to mitigate those challenges and provide for programs and policies that allow for both the successful operations of MTS's vital transit downtown throughout the Gaslamp and a successful project that sees that vision of a revitalized Fifth Avenue come to fruition. Thank you all for your time.
Michael Trimble, please make your way to the podium.
Good morning, Vice Chair, Mr. Whitburn, members of the board. My name is Michael Trimble. I'm the Executive Director of the Gaslamp Quarter Association. I represent the 400+ businesses in the historic district. I'd like the MTS board to reconsider the recommendation of bringing the bus back to Fifth Avenue, just north of Market Street, to north past Broadway. The GQA has been communicating the desire to close Fifth Avenue to create a pedestrian promenade since 2018. The GQA and the Downtown Partnership, as well as the City of San Diego, have been working diligently to transform Fifth Avenue into a pedestrian promenade for the past 3 years. As mentioned before, we're currently in the process of installing bollards on Fifth Avenue from K Street to Broadway. The Gaslamp Quarter is one of the most popular areas in San Diego for both visitors and residents alike. The promenade will help drive increased revenue for both existing and future businesses by encouraging visitors to explore Fifth Avenue as a dynamic daytime and evening destination. The creation of the pedestrian promenade will encourage future investment in Gaslamp Quarter and in downtown San Diego, and will drive tourism and increase tax revenue for the city of San Diego. This project has numerous public endorsements from the Tourism Authority, the Chamber of Commerce, the Convention Center, Circulate San Diego, to name a few. Fifth Avenue is currently one of the 8th most dangerous corridors in the city of San Diego, as identified by Circulate San Diego. By removing cars from the street during times of heavy pedestrian activity, this will reduce car pedestrian conflicts, prevent injuries, and save lives. Making all road users feel safe is crucial to getting more people to commute using non-car modes, which is essential to the local and state climate goals. The Fifth Avenue Promenade has been a priority project for the city of San Diego since 2020. As mentioned before, during the past 3 years, the GQA has been closing the Fifth Avenue to vehicular traffic from K to F Street 5 days a week for 12 hours a day. And I thank MTS for being a partner in this project and helping reroute that bus line off of Fifth Avenue onto the 7th Avenue detour. I've requested the GQA. The GQ has asked MTS to close the 2 remaining blocks from F Street to Broadway since the creation of this special event, and that has actually been met with some pushback. It's been difficult for merchants on those 2
30
blocks.
seconds left.
I'd like to thank everyone here for their consideration of making the Gaslamp Promenade a future project for not only the city residents, but visitors and tourists alike. Thank you for consideration.
Imran Habadov, please make your way to the podium.
Hi, thank you for your time. I'm not gonna take your time. Really, I'm the one of the restaurants at on the corner of F and Fifth, the Cafe 21. We've been in business for 15 years in San Diego. And I can tell that it's hugely impacted. It's not just necessarily my revenue, the bottom line, which is also, but that's not the point. The point is when the Fifth Avenue is closed on F Street, everybody's expectation is like the walking tour is done. So everybody's gathering around that corner. And then it's not just the customers and the people, the citizens that actually come to have fun, but it's also like homeless people. They're gonna gather around my restaurant. Every morning I clean the restaurant like a patio, and if this, I just don't want to go into details. So that would help a lot. Besides just me as a restaurant, I know a lot of other restaurateurs. There's like a few here. We struggle just because of that closure. And then if we open just honestly for our city people, I'm as a family, I want to take my kids to Gaslamp and walk around. I don't want to do it because it's not convenient. Besides the parking things, but just you don't want to walk in the dangerous places like where a lot of activity is going on. So I'm sorry if it's a little bit too, I don't know, fast. And then that's all I have to say. I would really appreciate if you consider to just open. It will make our city beautiful. We'll invite more people to walk around, and then yeah, it will be like another European city, European/American. Yeah. Thank you.
Stephen Sherman, please unmute yourself now.
Good morning to the board. Thanks for the opportunity. Just wanted to kind of piggyback on all the comments already made in support of the Gaslamp Promenade as planned. Please consider the comments that everyone's made in reference to the plan to support the walkability, which in turn obviously enhances the community engagement and helps support business and residential access to the heart of the city and the Gaslamp. This is clearly something that the community is eager to support and implement sooner than later. And we would all appreciate the full support of MTS as a reflection of what the community desired is.
Anar, please unmute yourself now.
Hey, good morning. My name is Anar Salayev. I am a resident of D9, and I am in favor of the Gaslamp Promenade as planned. The MTS board should reject the staff proposal. The board should instead direct staff to identify appropriate mitigation and alternative routing for bus routes 3 and 120, which it looks like they've already started doing. Another option is to look into ways where transit or a neighborhood electric vehicle can safely run through the promenade. This is known commonly as a transit mall, and it's successfully implemented across multiple cities in North America and the rest of the world. Some nearby examples being the 16th Street Mall in Denver and Nicollet Mall in Minneapolis. Pedestrian plazas increase downtown attractiveness, support car light living, and benefit business earnings. Hell, even the local business association is on board for pedestrianization, which you do not see often. MTS should not be a blocker, but rather encourage these bold changes. Thank you.
Manny Rodriguez, please unmute yourself now.
Hey, everyone, just wanted to speak to one of the points MTS made where they wanted to be they want the bus to drop people off where all the action is happening, and I understand that completely, but that's not always the most ideal thing. And I would like to give the example of like, you can't, for example, Disneyland, I don't necessarily like this place, but you won't see Disneyland putting a bus dropping you off right where the rides are. The bus kind of drops you off towards the entrance and then you walk. to the rides, you walk to the attractions. It would take up a lot of space to have a bus drop you off right where the roller coasters are. So I just want to make that clear that, I think this promenade will work best when the bus drops people off at the promenade and people then walk around the promenade and enjoy the place in the same way that, buses and cars drop people off at Disneyland, and then they from there walk on to enjoy the park. So I would advise the board to consider that. Thank you.
John Anderson, please unmute yourself now.
Good morning, all. I just wanted to piggyback additionally on all the comments for support, and I, as well as a resident of D3, support the pedestrianization of the promenade. And I understand the kind of rock and a hard place that MTS has been put in, having to reroute, especially the 3, as mentioned earlier in the presentation. I actually think this is an opportunity to ask the city to work with MTS to look at dedicating more right-of-way to buses only. As mentioned before, Broadway is a corridor with already 8 bus routes. It's extremely busy. That should be a bus-only route. And there's knock-on effects that assist all those 8 routes with staying on time, in addition to potentially being able to add the 3 and maintain an on-time schedule. Thank you.
Lucy Burney, please unmute yourself now.
Yes, hi, my name is Lucy Burney, and I just wanted to speak a little bit on this as well. Me and my family have invested in the gas lamp since 1990. We started buying real estate there. We have seen our beautiful downtown develop in the last 18, 20 years to see where it is today. And I cannot imagine us not protecting our beautiful downtown and our heart of our city. Our tenants have really struggled and tried very hard to stay alive, to continue to keep our gas lamp alive. And we need to continue to support that. I really believe on closing the street that will create a more family environment, a friendly environment for families, for locals, for our visitors to come and enjoy our beautiful city. So I'm just here to also support the closing of the gas lamp. I own a few buildings right on the 5th Avenue. And I know a lot of my tenants are listening and are part of this in support of this program. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Jason, please unmute yourself now.
Hey, I just want to say, as somebody who likes to go and enjoy bars and restaurants, that the gas lamp being closed off has been the best thing ever. I hope you guys do not open that up to cars. I mean, sure, on weekdays, whatever, but on weekends, when I'm going out with my friends, it's amazing. So please keep this going, keep it closed off. Let's get the bus rerouted, And also I agree with somebody else who mentioned that we should have maybe some streets be bus only. Because then, those buses are not getting stuck in traffic. They will be on time. We have schedules to keep here, and we are a growing city. We must take the bus. It's kind of our only option. Cars are not an option for us anymore. Unless you live out in Poway or far, far away, then you do a park and ride. But for people who live in D3, driving is not the option. So that's my take. Thank you.
Aaron Landry, please unmute yourself now.
Hi, my name is Aaron Langelier. I've owned a business in the gas lamp. I own several businesses in the gas lamp for the past 15 years. I just wanted to hop on the call and say I'm very much in support of the promenade. I have about 240 employees, and they all feel like it is a great idea as well. So I would like to see that this plan continue. I understand that this creates some problems for MTS, but I think that they can be altered as shown. So thank you for your time.
Catherine Rhodes, please unmute yourself now.
Hello, this is Catherine Rhodes. And of course, where there's a will, there's a way. And it seems like everybody wants it closed. So, a solution that I was just thinking of, since you're going to delete, I think there was maybe 3 transit stops. and it looks like you do have one transit stop on 7th Avenue. I think you should just add some more transit stops on 7th Avenue. And then instead of turning west on Broadway, go north a little bit more and turn on B Street, where there's an existing bus routes right there and bus stops right there. So I think the solution would be just go, not turn onto Broadway, but go straight on 7th Avenue until you get to B Street and then make your turn. Thank you so much.
Joe Santos, please unmute yourself now.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me. My name is Joe Santos. I'm multiple business owner in the gas lamp. Want to also just add my name to all the comment that's been out there and all of our employees, some of them which are on the call and some, a lot of emails and stuff. We are completely for it. It's been an amazing test run to be closing it off now. And with having cross streets open, I think a little more creativity rather than just trying to block it would be expected of MTS. So we could work together. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
That concludes public comment, Vice Chair.
Thank you very much, Clerk Gonzalez. I want to thank our CEO and Mr. Desmond and the entire MTS staff for the presentation on this. Thank you to everybody who provided public comment on this morning. I wouldn't normally start off the discussion while chairing the meeting, but since downtown San Diego is actually the district that I represent, I hope that my colleagues will indulge me as I kick off our conversation here. I very much appreciate the input that we heard about the importance of the gas lamp promenade. It's something that I could tell you residents and businesses and visitors to downtown are excited about and have been eagerly awaiting. Both the state and federal governments are helping to fund this larger, safer public space. It'll be an asset that people from around the county will come and enjoy. And in fact, its popularity will hopefully increase transit ridership to and from downtown. At the same time, the promenade does create issues for a couple of the existing bus routes, and we heard and saw that today. And I appreciate that MTS staff has brought those issues forward to us. Our CEO and the MTS staff and this board are committed to making transit more efficient and more convenient. And the closure of 5th Avenue does make that more difficult in this case. So how do we address this? In my opinion, the solution isn't to scrap or delay the portion of this long-awaited, forward-thinking, family-friendly pedestrian promenade. Instead, I do think that we as a board should ask for the city of San Diego's assistance, including with physical modifications, to help facilitate route adjustments that minimize the operational impacts on MTS. And as we heard this morning, that view is shared by Mayor Gloria and Circulate San Diego, which sent in a letter in support of the promenade, the Downtown San Diego Partnership, the Gas Lamp Corridor Association, many of the business owners, and many others. One question for Mr. Desmond. It's my understanding that the city is willing and has expressed a willingness to assist with physical modifications to help mitigate some of the issues here. Has that willingness been expressed to you?
Excuse me. Yes, that's correct. We had a meeting the other day, and they're certainly willing to listen to what we might need to do.
Okay.
At least make the physical bus movements possible.
Thank you. That's been my understanding. I'm glad that's been expressed to you as well. To that end, I'd like to offer a motion for my colleagues' consideration. And that motion is that the MTS Board of Directors asks that the City of San Diego and MTS staff collaborate and identify solutions to transit challenges resulting from the Gas Lamp Promenade project. Thank you, and I'll invite comments and questions from my colleagues, beginning with Member Donovan. Okay, we have a second from Member Ela Rivera. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make a quick comment. First of all, I want to say that although it seems like there's some hurt feelings, I think this was totally appropriate to be brought to the board. It seems like a really big deal. So I think it was exactly proper to bring it to the board. And then my other comment is, if you look at what we're voting on, it's simply an advisory. It's just simply giving a heads up that there's going to be some probably not good effects on MTS and their service. But we want to work with you to minimize the negative effects. I mean, that's all we're voting on. So I don't know how that's going to be a problem. So I support, and I support your wording. I mean, if we have to change the route, we have to change the route. Again, it's not our right of way. It's up to the city of San Diego, but I think it's totally proper that we advise them on what the impacts are going to be. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Donovan. Member Illawarra, Member Hall.
Council President Pro Tem.
Oh, Chair Pro Tem. All right.
Well, if we're doing that, I think Mr. Goble had his first. So just to be fair, if we're doing it like that,
All right, 3 strikes and we'll go to Member Goble. over
I have
here.
no one to pass it to, so I'll go ahead. A question for Dennis is, you mentioned during special events, we make some kind of changes already. We have some experience. I understand there's confusion among writers because they don't know what dates, what events, but can you tell me the operational impact? Would they be similar to what is on slide 10 with the turns and things? What do we know about existing changes?
Yes, the current special event varies in its hours from day to day. So there's an image of the sign on the slide right now. That's the sign that advises passengers. I think that you can see a little bit of.
That's not an MTS sign, by the way. It would not look like that.
And maybe some potential rider frustration taken out on the bottom of that sign, but that attempts to describe the different hours on the different days of the detour. So this is very challenging, and the reason why we wouldn't recommend continuing with the special event permit. It again does not impact Route 120. It does impact Route 3. Route 3, I'll just bring back the slide. Route 3 does a similar routing to this, except the special event only goes as far north as F Street. So we're able to actually return to Fifth Avenue on F Street. So that does 2 things. One, it puts this stop back into service. And the other thing is it avoids the Broadway and especially the right turn from Broadway onto northbound Fifth. So that's an issue that we don't have today with the special event that would be introduced with the full build out.
So today we do have an additional 2 right turn or additional 2 turns.
Correct. During the special event, yes.
As with this. So we're kind of have
Correct.
some experience with that. It's just the Broadway.
Yes.
Avoidance
Correct.
kind of thing. My other question is ADA, paratransit. Do we have any idea how much paratransit service would be impacted by this?
So we, since we wouldn't be able to get buses onto this, we would not be able to serve addresses actually on Fifth Avenue. We would serve those on the cross streets, E Street, F Street, et cetera, would still be open. So that would be as close as we could get, and that would fulfill our obligations under the ADA, which is to provide origin and destination service. And that's, if that's as close as we can physically get the bus, then that's as best as we could do.
Okay. In general, I think cities ought to be able to determine their own land use and what they want to do with their use. And that should be paramount. And the rest of the world kind of has to live together with that. And I think what the city is proposing is a great regional asset, not just a downtown asset. It's how do we make it work? Perhaps there's a shuttle service the city may consider to help people with paratransit or seniors to get to near bus stops or something. But I think you should be able to determine your own destiny.
Thank you, Member Goble. We'll go now to Chair Pro Tem Montgomery Stepp.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair. I was sort of surprised to see this in the manner that it came before us today, without being privy to the conversations that have been going on for the last 3 years and the dynamics of those conversations. So I would just say for my preference to be for the future with a decision like this, which is an advisory decision, but it's still sort of a big statement, that we get some sort of prep info items, something that would let us know what is going on, right? Because I think that the points that have been brought up in this meeting are very valid, and they're very valid for a lot of people in my community that take these routes to this, this area. And I don't, I will never discount that. I think that serving disadvantaged neighborhoods and giving that type of access is super important. I also just think that there is a way. There's a way with all the technology that we have, all the micro mobility that we have, everything, all of the options that we have now, that I don't, taking the original recommendation, kind of taking that as a board, I certainly wouldn't support that. I do support my colleague and what he has brought, because I do believe that we need to continue to collaborate on this. So that's where I'm going to be. But I do have questions about the temporary event permitting process, and whether understanding that this might turn into a permanent deal, whether there was any Title VI civil rights equity analysis done within that special permitting process.
That's a city permit process, so I'm sorry that I can't answer that.
Okay, so MTS didn't do, based on what you're bringing to us now about the impacts to these riders, any type of analysis, even when there was the temporary, we were going through the temporary processes and these conversations.
Yeah, no, there's no, and actually, yeah, we wouldn't unless we had a major service change. So this would not necessarily be a major service change under our policy 42 rules.
Okay, so even now, with proposed changes moving forward, there would be no Title VI analysis done?
Right, that's true.
Okay. What about any kind of public input, hearings, anything like that? Would this be something that maybe could be brought before one of our community boards, or to receive any additional input?
That would be up to the city of San Diego.
Okay, so here's the thing. We've been asked to take a position because of the impact on disadvantaged communities. That's what I'm hearing from the presentation. So I would just ask that moving forward, we have some sort of analysis to back that up, or at least to mitigate some of those impacts. And what's been brought is, I guess we could use that, but I'm just, longer term for permanent changes, it would be good to get something in a little bit more depth about that. If that's not something we have the capacity for, I understand that. But if we're going to put in a presentation about the neighborhoods that are impacted, I would like to get a little bit more information about that. So.
And we will certainly notify riders, and we can notify communities through all of our channels when these changes come to pass. They are scheduled to be implemented in June, as of at least by June 30th. The city plans to put this forward, so it doesn't give us a lot of time. And I don't think there's any changes that are going to be made at this point, but we can certainly inform people that the routes will need to change.
Okay, I appreciate the presentation and bringing this to our attention. I am going to support the motion on the floor. I think that we have to balance this approach, and I'm hopeful that the city and MTS can work together to do that. With ridership being certainly a priority, especially because of the routes and the people that will be impacted. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Pro Tem Montgomery Steppe. Member Ela Rivera.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I'm going to echo much of what you said and what Council President Pro Tem Montgomery Steppe said. I do appreciate the work that's gone into this. I know it's been a lot. I will also echo that I was a bit surprised to see this coming on the board agenda. This route runs through, I think, all 4 of our districts. And I think it would have been helpful to either hear it at the executive committee or have more engagement from the various board members before it was brought here. I'm not going to dismiss the potential for impacts, but I will say that the promenade that's going to be on 5th Avenue, I want more of those throughout the city. I hope that it can be a model for what could come to District 9. I think it is the exact sort of thing that will create a bigger community that doesn't just walk but rides transit. I see this as a huge win for the city of San Diego. And so I think it's incumbent upon us to figure out how to make it work with the promenade there in its best version. And in its best version, it will go past Market. I think about how close it gets to the trolley line. If it extends to Broadway. And I'm really excited about that. I'm excited about the idea of just a block away from a trolley line, there being access to a promenade that will move throughout the gas lamp. So I'm excited about the project. I understand the potential for impact, but we'll echo some of the concerns about the process here for bringing this conversation. It's not that it's inappropriate to have the conversation here. I just wish we would have started the conversation a bit earlier. There was a CEO comment at the end of executive committee, and then it was on the agenda here. And we probably could have avoided some of the tension, and tension doesn't have to be a bad thing. But I think there was some unnecessary tension on this item as a result of that process, which I hope we can avoid in the future. I will also echo the comments from Council President Pro Tem Montgomery Stepp with respect to ensuring that we are doing analysis before we simply reference impacts on disadvantaged communities. That flows in multiple directions. That's not just a critique for this particular report, but we want to make sure that there's data to back that up, and that disadvantaged communities, I'll speak for myself here. I want to make sure that disadvantaged communities are not being used to further an argument without first doing the analysis to ensure that there will be an impact. And so with that, obviously, given my second, happy to support the motion you've made. I appreciate the way that you've modified it, Vice Chair, and will be supportive.
Thank you, Member Eula Rivera. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second, and I will restate the motion. The motion states the MTS Board of Directors asks that the City of San Diego and MTS staff collaborate and identify solutions to transit challenges resulting from the Gas Lamp Promenade project. With that, we will go ahead and call the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. That motion passes. Thank you, everybody, very much. We will now move on to item number 16, the MTS Safety Performance Annual Review.
Good morning. My name is Fabian Soberg, and I'm the Assistant Safety Manager for the Rail Division. And I'm excited to present our annual safety performance and review update for the rail to the board members. So our first update item is going to be our Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan, better known as the PTAS. So just to give you a little background on the PTAS, it was a requirement set forth by the FTA in 2019 to enhance the safety of public transportation. It also outlines our safety objectives, standards, and priorities as a transit agency based on the safety management and system principles. The PTAS is required to be approved by the board of directors and to be signed by the accountable executives, which is the CEO and then the COO of the rail division. The first approval of the PTAS was done back in 2020, and we haven't had any updates until now with our bipartisan infrastructure law requirements. So as you can see, we have 4 items that need to be implemented into the PTAS. They have currently been implemented in the 2023, excuse me, PTAS. So the first one, you're going to see the Joint Safety Committee that has been established. And then also the committee has approved the PTAS for 2023 back in December of 2022. The next item is our written exposure control plan. That plan is currently available on our intranet for our employees to review. Our next item is the de-escalation training for operators and for maintenance personnel. They're going to be receiving this training during their initial training and then also receive the training during their recertification as well. And then the last item is the transit worker assaults will be added as a safety performance measure category. Currently, the FTA has established 4 safety performance measure categories. These measurements are conducted by taking a 3 calendar year average of the National Transit Database reportable items like fatalities, injuries, safety events, and then system reliability totals rate per 100,000 revenue miles to achieve a reduction compared to the previous 3 years. So what we're going to look at right now is the safety performance for fatalities. So our goal is always to have 0 fatalities. And as you can see from the chart, we did not meet that goal for 0, but we did meet the goal to show a reduction compared to the previous 3 years, starting from our baseline, which you see as 0.12. Now, from 2019 to 2022, we did not have a reduction, but we also didn't have an increase. So that's a good thing. Our next item is injuries. Now, the FTA defines injuries as individuals being transported from our individuals who were injured at our facilities, stations, or on our vehicles and being transported from the scene to seek medical attention. So our baseline was 3.47, and as you can see, we did meet the goal of a reduction compared to the previous 3 years. Currently, we are at 2.20. The next item is safety events. Now, safety events are considered to be fatalities, injuries, collisions, derailments. Those are all going to be considered safety events. So the baseline, we started at 4.65. And we are currently at 1.83. So that is a great reduction for us. System reliability. So this is the number that you want to see an increase in because this is the mileage that our trains travel before we experience a train failure. So the baseline was at 10,259 miles. We are currently at 14,156 miles, which is a testament to our LRV department for maintaining our vehicles so well that we can travel so many miles without experiencing train failures. And then our last item for safety performance is emergency brake applications. So anytime an operator goes into emergency brake, it is documented by the controller and they take down the date, the time, the location, and then the circumstances around the emergency brake application. Our baseline was 11.51, and as you can see, we actually didn't meet our goal for 2020 to 2022. We had a little bit of an increase from 11.01 to 11.06. And the reason for that was, as you are fully aware, we had an extension, a Blue Line extension, 11-mile extension. And with that extension, we also hired a lot of new operators. So in 2021, we actually qualified 47 new operators. And then in 2022, we qualified 35. So we exposed 82 new operators to our system. And I'm actually, to be honest, this is a great number because 82 brand new operators on our system, and we just seen a little bit of an uptick. So I'm okay with this. Next year, I see this number going down. Those new operators will have some experience under their belt with more training and oversight from our line supervisors. So I expect that number to decrease next year during our presentation. So you're probably wondering how we compare to other agencies in the state. For the calendar year of 2022, we had 19 total accidents. Compared to the other agencies in California, we did very, very well in comparison. So we're really proud of that number of 19 versus our other agencies in the state. So even though we don't experience too many accidents, we always want to make sure we're prepared for accidents. And one of the ways that we prepare is from our emergency preparedness plan, but we also do training for outside agencies. So for law enforcement and then also emergency responders. So what you're looking at right now is a list of different emergency drills and trainings that we conducted in 2022. We like to reach out to the outside agencies and invite them to our property, allow them access to our vehicles so they can get familiar, and then also set up scenarios, or they can bring their own scenarios and act them out on our property. So one thing is we'd like to think of new creative ways to educate law enforcement and emergency responders. And we were approached by the Sheriff's Media Department for their electrical safety law enforcement series. So they did a series of scenario-based videos for law enforcement training. For example, what would you do if you came upon an electric vehicle that was on fire, or if a charging station was crashed into, or for us, if you respond to a light rail vehicle versus auto and the catenary wire came down. So the videos will be shown to law enforcement across San Diego County for training purposes. And I just want to take the time to show the video that we participated in with this series.
Let's begin by addressing additional types of incidents to help you better assess various electrical risks and formulate a safe plan of action. The Metropolitan Transit System operates the same. These trolleys are powered by 700-volt direct current distributed from power substations to the overhead catenary system on the trains. Although most calls involving the trolley may not pose an electrical threat, it is wise to exercise caution when you arrive on scene. As an example, let's look at an incident involving a trolley versus vehicle. When you arrive on scene, pause and look around for any down lines that may be in contact with the trolley itself, the victim's vehicle, or the ground. Report your findings to dispatch and confirm they are in contact with the MTS Operations Control Center. That center monitors the entire trolley system 24/7 with experienced dispatchers who can provide real-time operational and safety information. They will also dispatch their line supervisor, who plays a key role in helping you establish and maintain scene safety. Next, make contact with the trolley operator. They are your on-scene source of expertise and guidance and can provide critical information needed to implement a safe plan of action. Another extremely important safety tip. As you approach the scene, be constantly alert for trolleys coming through on adjacent tracks. They may not yet be aware of the incident and may not slow down or stop. Another precaution, always step over the rails, never on top of them. Again, in situations where you've confirmed no line is down, coordinate rescue efforts with the trolley operator. In situations that result with a line down, such as an earthquake or equipment failure, stay back, establish a safety perimeter, coordinate with the operator, and wait for FD. Finally, when the line supervisor arrives, be sure to provide an update and allow them unrestricted access to the scene and equipment. They are there to assist you and to conduct their own incident investigation, which is required by California's Safety Oversight Agency.
All right, thank you, Fabian. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Jared Garcia. I'm the safety manager for bus. The bus performance targets, our baseline was established from 2018 to 2020, which was pre-pandemic. The bipartisan infrastructure law requires us to change our agency safety plan so that we use a 3-year rolling average going forward. The performance targets do not consider crimes, fault, or preventability. And it's based on vehicle revenue miles. In 2022, we traveled just over 22 million miles. The first performance target is fatalities. During calendar year 2022, we did experience one fatality. Our goal is an aspirational goal of 0. That accident involved a motorcycle running a red light, and law enforcement did determine that we were not at fault for this accident. The next performance target is injuries. For the year, we finished below our baseline, which is what we want. For paratransit, we had the same number as the baseline. However, due to reduced service compared to the pre-pandemic levels, the rate did exceed the goal. The next performance target is safety events. So this would be all injuries as well as accidents where vehicles disabled, towed from the scene, as well as any other type of event such as a fire or evacuation. The totals for the year also were met. However, again, due to reduced mileage for paratransit, the rate was exceeded. The last performance target is system reliability, which measures our state of good repair. And for all modes of bus, we did exceed the goal, which is a good thing. So all of these performance measures are reviewed by our internal review committee, where we look at not just fault, but preventability, as well as other causal or contributing factors. Of all of the events, 84% were determined to be non-preventable, with only 16% being preventable. Most years, preventability ranges between about 10 and 20%. We also look at the types of accidents that we have. 57% this last year were due to slips, trips, and falls, while 43% involved collisions. And typically, the slips, trips, and falls range between about 55 and about 65%. And as far as the collisions go, was a little bit higher this year than the last couple of years. 1/3 of those collisions involved the other vehicle running a red light. In addition to that, we also look at all of these events for preventability, and we track this as part of our key performance indicators and is also part of Board Policy 42. We finished FY 22 with a 1.02 per 100,000 miles, which is the second best year we've had. That does show that there's a 27% decrease in preventable accidents over the last 8 years. We also measure preventable accidents for our rapid service, and this is also part of our performance incentive program. We finished FY 22 with the lowest rate we've had on record at a 0.15, which is a 32% reduction year over year, and a 72% reduction since we started rapid service in FY 15. 3 years ago, we started operating service along El Cajon Boulevard in a newly established bus-only lane, which is also part of Sandag's vision for the Mid-City Rapid 215. And the primary goal was to improve on-time performance and travel time throughout the corridor. We now have 3 years of data to compare before this lane was implemented. And we have experienced more consistent travel times and improved on-time performance. During this time, both before and after the bus-only lane, we did not have any pedestrian or bike-related accidents. Our mirror-only accident rate did decrease. However, we did see an increase in overall vehicle collisions by a factor of 2. And passenger falls increased from 0.33 to 3.33, or a factor of 10. So what have we done about it? We recognized that there was an increase in accidents the first month of service, and we immediately implemented a new enhanced training program for all of our bus operators. We have since made this a part of our annual training. We do 8 hours of annual safety training for all of our bus operators, as well as all new hires. We've worked with the city to change the signage to let motorists know that they can enter the lane when making a right turn, as well as change the striping at multiple intersections and adding right turn arrows on the pavement. We've also leveraged our rapid buses, which is a dedicated fleet of buses, and added a warning sign on the buses to try and remind motorists to make sure they look at the bus lane before entering it. And since we've made these changes, we've seen an 18% reduction in accidents compared to our first year in 2020. And we'll continue to work with city staff to try and implement new mitigation strategies to further reduce the accidents we're experiencing on this lane. Starting in April, we will be testing a new electronic mirror pilot. This is going to eventually, hopefully, replace external mirrors. And we hope that this will improve visibility for our bus operators, and also with the slimmer profile, reduce our overall accident rate, as well as make it easier for buses to come and flush along the curb line, making it easier for passengers boarding and exiting the vehicle. Right now, there are about 20 transit agencies throughout the US that are going to be implementing this type of device, and it's part of a project to help the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration determine whether this type of product can be approved for vehicles going forward. Every year, the CHP comes in and conducts an annual audit and inspection of all of our bus yards. They look at everything from vehicles to licensing, training records, drug and alcohol testing. At 4 of the 5 terminals, we passed without any findings. We did have our first transit property did get an unsatisfactory score due to 1 driver record and 3 uncompleted logbooks. Since that time, we have implemented additional training for the staff at First Transit and implemented some more policies and procedures to make sure that we are in full compliance. And we've also increased our oversight to make sure that these new policies and procedures are taking place. Fabian had mentioned earlier about our first responder training. We've also restarted our first responder training for our battery electric bus fleet. It's important that as we transition from CNG buses to electric buses, that our first responders know what to do in the event of an emergency involving one of these new battery electric buses. Safety training is a vital part of both the agency safety plan and just what we do every day. And I want to highlight some of the activities that have been conducted this last year. In October, we had 7 mechanics graduate from the apprenticeship program, which is a 3-year program. And we also had our Safe Driver Awards, where we recognized 280 bus operators for going the year without a preventable accident. And we also recognized 13 bus operators for the National Safety Council's Million Mile Award, which is 25,000 hours of driving without a preventable accident. Lastly, the bipartisan infrastructure law required us to make changes to our existing safety committees. It required an equal number of union and management representatives. It required us to reconfigure the safety committees by July of 2022, which was met. It also required these new reformatted committees to approve our agency safety plan prior to board approval. And they were required to complete that by December 31st of 2022. And all of our safety committees approved the plan in November of 2022, meeting the requirement of the bipartisan infrastructure law. With that, it's our recommendation that the Board of Directors approve updates to the Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan, known as the PTAS.
Thank you both for those presentations. Let's go to Clerk Gonzalez and see if there's any public comment.
We do. Catherine Rhodes, please unmute yourself now.
Oh, wonderful. Hello, this is Catherine Rhodes. And what I wanted to talk about, since you're having safety, is seismic safety. I'm not sure if you know, but in the chat, I put in the new Alquist Priolo maps for the Point Loma Quad that shows that a lot of your tracks for the train and for the trolley pass active faulting, but you guys don't do anything about it. And so the solution is that Caltrans has a free seismic advisory board that can give you seismic guidance. For example, I think it was maybe Commercial Street. A lot of times right around 16th Street, you have maybe, I'm not sure if it's called a derailment, but the tracks aren't straight. And that's because people think that active faulting means an earthquake when it doesn't. Active faulting means that you have creep. There's a little bit of creep, like 9 millimeters every year. And after a couple of years, your tracks are going to be bent a little bit, and then you'll have to redo them. So what I recommend is that you actually look at this Alquist Priolo map and talk to the people at Caltrans Seismic Safety Advisory. And, I always try to say, let's reconvene the 2006 Caltrans Technical Advisory Board for the Coronado Fault. And I think that you will save a lot of money from not having your trolleys break down and not be able to go to the tracks because the tracks are just a little bit misaligned. Thank you so much.
That concludes public comment, Vice Chair.
Thank you very much, Clerk Gonzalez. Let me ask a couple of questions in regard to the El Cajon Boulevard bus only lane. And I really appreciate you sharing the information and all the data that you have provided. It's very helpful. I note on that that the trip time decreased by 2 minutes. The accident rate doubled. Is that a typical situation when we roll out bus only lanes, or is there something specific to El Cajon Boulevard that seems to be creating more problems than usual?
I think in general, bus only lanes are newer, and part of the pilot project was to see how that would work going forward. So with this particular segment, most vehicles that we are involved in an accident or we have to do an emergency brake to avoid an accident, cars don't understand that they can occupy the bus only lane 200 feet before making a right turn. And so part of this is, perhaps not calling it a bus only lane when in reality it's an inclusive lane to all vehicles when parking or making a right turn. And rather than calling a bus only lane, calling it a bus priority lane. Most motorists understand the concept of a right turn only lane. They may not understand the concept of a bus only lane.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your efforts to mitigate the accidents. I appreciate that. All right. The recommended action is to approve updates to the Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan. I'll be happy to go ahead and offer that motion. We have a second from Chair Pro Tem Montgomery Stepp. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you again, and we will move along to item number 17, which is the Operations Budget Status Report for December of 2022.
Good morning. My name is Gordon Meyer. I'm the Operating Budget Supervisor here at MTS. This morning, I'm going to provide an update on the FY23 operating budget results through December 2022, or the first half of our fiscal year. And this is the last report that we'll be bringing back to the board on the original FY23 operating budget. And over the next couple of months, we'll be bringing back the proposed amended budget as well as the FY24 budget. So getting into the numbers, so first we'll look at operating revenues. So first line, we have fare revenue. So here we were favorable 488,000 or 1.5% through December. Fare revenue was favorable to last year by 9.9 million or up 40.9%. About half of that 9.9 was because we didn't offer a free ride month this year, and the other half roughly was due to actual ridership growth. In December, passenger revenue was at 70.5% of our pre-COVID baseline, so pretty close to where we were last month. So we hope to see that number continue to rise going forward. Next line, we have our other operating revenue. So here we were favorable 210,000 or 1.8% through December. That's being driven primarily by favorable vehicle advertising revenue, which is our bus and trolley wraps, as well as favorable interest revenue with interest rates where they are today, which is high. Offsetting the favorable advertising and interest is our unfavorable state energy credit revenue, particularly the LCFS. So we sell these credits in a marketplace. We had budgeted $140 per credit based on where the prices were last year during budget development. And for most of this year, they've been trending under $70 per credit, so less than half of where we budgeted. So that's a big category where we'll be adjusting the mid-year budget coming up here shortly. So all in all, our operating revenues are favorable by a little under 700K or 1.5% through December. Moving on to expenses. So personnel costs were unfavorable to budget by a little over $1 million or 1.3%. This is primarily workers' compensation costs, mostly within bus, but also in rail operations. And then operator wages on the bus side are trending higher than included in the budget as well, because we did an unplanned collective bargaining agreement to increase the driver wages to address the driver shortage. Next line, we have purchase transportation. So that is our fixed route contract operated by Transdev, as well as our paratransit service contract operated by First Transit. So here we're trending favorably by 4.3 million or 9.1%. On the fixed route side, we're favorable because we haven't been able to operate the full service levels that we had included in the budget because of the driver shortage. On the paratransit side, we haven't seen passenger demand come back as fast as we had planned, but we are expecting a spike in demand in the second half of the year as the San Diego Regional Community Center reopens, which is historically a pretty strong source of our riders for paratransit. Other outside services were favorable by 1.6 million or 8.8%. So that's primarily the favorable software costs for our Pronto fare system. We didn't start incurring operating and maintenance costs until we provided final acceptance of the software to the contractor, and that was delayed as we finalized some punch list items. So we started incurring those in January. Energy were unfavorable by 1.5 million or 6.8% through December. This is primarily on the CNG rates as we experience record high commodity rates in January, which is a little ahead of this report, but we actually paid $54 per therm base or versus a typical winter spike around $5. So it was almost 10 times the typical commodity rate in January. So that's another category where we'll be making a large adjustment during the upcoming mid-year adjustment. The CNG commodity rates also impact electricity, so we're trending unfavorably there as well too. And the next line, we have other expenses. So this includes risk management, materials and supplies, as well as general and administrative costs. And we're trending unfavorably 266,000 to date here, which is mostly unfavorable revenue vehicle parts within our LRV maintenance department. So all in all, our operating expenses were favorable by 3.1 million or 1.7% through December. So when we roll revenues and expenses up together through December, we're favorable by 3.8 million or 2.7%. Looking forward to the upcoming mid-year adjustment. So the major variances we'll be adjusting for the purchase transportation costs, which we'll be reducing to reflect our current service levels. We'll be bumping up energy costs pretty significantly. And then on the other revenue side and passenger revenue side, we're not expecting huge variances on the overall revenue number, but we are going to bump up interest and advertising and reduce energy credits. So overall, we're not expecting to do a large adjustment next month. And then just a quick update on the stimulus funds. So we have been awarded 360 million in CARES and ARP stimulus funds to date since the beginning of the pandemic. We've spent about 175 million of that. This year's budget included 37.3 million to cover our structural deficit. We've drawn 37.1 million of that, so almost all of it so far. So that leaves us about 185.2 million remaining for addressing future structural deficits in the operating budget. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Clerk Gonzalez, do we have any public comment?
We do. Catherine Rhodes, please unmute yourself now.
Oh, hi. This is Catherine Rhodes, and I just want to mention that there's over $500 million left over in the county's American Rescue Plan Act fund, and they don't really have any plans for it. And so since you received the ARPA funds previously for the to pay for the youth passes under 18, and you don't really have a plan of how you're going to pay for them forward, I would ask for you guys to ask the county for ARPA funds for the 24 and under people, and then maybe even ask them for ARPA funds for everybody. And the reason for that is that I don't think that families will allow their children to go on buses themselves if they've never been on a bus. But if you give, the whole family a pass, I think that they'll feel safer allowing their children to go on it themselves. Thank you so much.
That concludes public comment, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Clerk Gonzalez. This is an informational item, so no motion is necessary. Seeing no board comment or questions, we will thank you very much for the status report and move along in the agenda here. We do not have a chair's report this morning. We do not have a CEO report. Are there any board member communications this morning? Seeing no board member communications, we will move to adjournment. Our next meeting date is March 16th, 2023 at 9 o'clock in the morning. And with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.